Hello, this is Glasgow Rangers Nation. I'm Owen James, and this is all your latest Rangers news, guys. We've got news about another behind closed doors friendly game for Rangers and a comprehensive victory this time, and how that team that was selected could well prove a big hint as to how Rangers will line up against Panathinaikos on the 22nd after what Russell Martin said previously. We've also got some news about the rebirth of a striker who I've been telling you all along is a better striker than Cyril Dessers, who is 10 times the player that Cyril Dessers is, who once he is fit and firing will be a good striker. I have been telling you all this and people have been telling me he's mince, he's rubbish, he's dug me, etc, etc. I think he's starting to prove you guys wrong. And also we're going to talk a little bit of Clinton Enciala, a possible departure for Clinton to go and link up with a former coach at Rangers. Also news of another former Rangers coach getting a top Premier League job as well. Yes, another coach who Rangers have obviously lost or got rid of has now gone on to be a coach at a top European team. Another one missed out on. Anyway, let's start off with news about this bounce game that was played, or this friendly game, behind closed doors friendly game. It does seem that Rangers are playing a lot of behind closed doors friendly games during this pre-season. The story seems to be that it is a case of Russell Martin wanting to shield his players from pressure, wanting to shield his players away from any negativity or criticism. I think Russell Martin was very aware of the fact that his appointment as manager was not universally welcomed by everybody, that it was not a popular appointment, shall we say. And I think there was a concern that if things didn't go as well as he'd hoped in games, that even friendly games, that the crowd could have turned a little bit on him. And I think he wanted to shield his players. That is one possible reason for all these behind closed doors friendly games. And also it takes the pressure off players to a little extent. As well. Right, let's have a little look. So what do we know? This bounce game that took place yesterday against Dunfermline Athletic. Yeah, that's right. It was Dunfermline we played. So obviously, look, you've got to obviously put whatever the result was in a bit of context. But it was Dunfermline. Dunfermline have, of course, played some competitive football already. They played in the Scottish League Cup group stage, losing 4-1 to Hearts the other day. So, they've already got there a little bit further along in their pre-season. They're a little bit fitter, a little bit more match sharp as well. So, you've got to kind of take that into account, as well as the fact, obviously, they're not very good. They do play in the Scottish Championship. They finished 7th out of 10 in the Scottish Premiership last season. And they do have a new manager as well. Yes, Neil Lennon. Yes, him of Celtic fame. Interesting. Not always nice, I suppose, to beat them from that aspect. Anyway, look, let's have a little look. So this game finished 4-1 to Rangers at Auchenhowie. That's where the game was played. I must say Dunfermline's badge is particularly fascinating with that weird little castle stroke, skyscraper stroke, whatever the hell it is, with a little kind of witchy tree on the back of it. Very, very weird. Very, very strange. Odd badge. But there we go. Hey, each to their own. So the team that Rangers fielded. Now, Russell Martin had previously commented that in his next friendly game that you would probably see something close to. Not exactly. That's the caveat you put on it. Sorry, John Bennett again. That it would be close to what we would do when it comes to playing Panathinaikos. So the team that he played was Butland in goal. Back four was Tavernier, Aarons, Suter and Giga. We'll talk a little bit about how that would have lined up in a moment. Then it was Rothwell, Raskan and Diamonde. And a front three of Asgard, Dowell and Danilo. Now, I know what you're automatically going to say. I think a couple of things jump out off the page, jump out off the screen straight away with that one. And that is, what was the back four? How was it lined up? And what's Kieran Dowell doing? I think that's kind of where we're going with this one. So the first one is, I very much think that the back four was Tav, Suter, Giga, Aarons. That's how I think they lined up. Now, there's been a lot of talk in the media and around that Russell Martin is going to play James Tavernier as right back this season still. And we can debate that in a moment. And he's going to use Max Aarons as a left back. Now, that raises a number of questions. Question number one, of course, is if Max Aarons is playing left back, does that mean that Russell Martin has zero faith in Hjefte, Fraser and Ridvan? So you could say that that's a very strong possibility, that the guy doesn't really see Hjefte, doesn't really see Ridvan, doesn't really see any of those guys really having a positive impact on Rangers going forward. So it looks very much like he's planning to use Max Aarons as a left back. Now, for me personally, this is a bad move. Max Aarons is right-footed. Now, the one thing that you have, I think, is if you don't play with width in Scotland, natural width, you struggle against the low block. You struggle against teams that will sit in against you because you can't get around the back, you can't get around the outside of them. You know, we saw last year, didn't we, that when we played Sterling at left back, or we played, I think Casemiro had a game there as well. You know, when you play a right footer at left back, their natural instinct is always to come inside on their right foot and not go outside onto their left foot like Hjefte does, like Ridvan does, like Robbie Fraser does. And it automatically narrows the pitch. Now, this sort of begs the question, is this A, because he has zero faith in Hjefte and Ridvan and Fraser, and he doesn't really see them as being, you know, having an impact straight away for this team? Is that the reason? Or is it because he's just, again, trying to crowbar Tav into the team? You know, personally, my opinion, for what it's worth, is playing James Tavernier for another season at right back is an absolute massive error by the manager. And probably will lead to him getting the sack. James Tavernier is a serial killer of managers. We know that. You know, Tav one-on-one has some of the worst stats in Scotland. Tav, in terms of those duels against his opposite number, has some of the worst stats in Scotland. You know, statistically, and this is not just me giving an opinion, this is statistically, according to FB Ref, James Tavernier is one of the worst defensive right backs in Scotland. And I just think against the European sides, he's going to be exploited even more. So to me, keeping Tav at right back, keeping Tav in the team is a massive error by the manager. You know, it really genuinely is. I just was really hoping that the new manager would come in and move on from the old mistakes. James Tavernier was finished 2 seasons ago. James Tavernier has zero future at this football club. And yes, in the past, he has been a fabulous servant for this club. He has got some great numbers for this club. But personally speaking, this guy has zero future at this football club. And I just genuinely think that if we persist with him and play him in the majority of games at right back this season, defensively, we are going to be exceptionally weak down that right-hand side, and teams will attack us on their left, our right, and they will get in behind us time after time after time because of the fact that James Tavernier is one of the worst right backs in Europe. I mean, that's just my personal opinion, but that is based on stats. Like I said, he's one-on-one duels. He is statistically, according to FB Ref, one of the worst in Scotland. Tackling, one of the worst in Scotland. Aerially, one of the worst in Scotland. So I'm just going off stats. It looks like Suter and Giga in central defence. I think, you know, even with the transfer speculations surrounding John Suter, I think he is going to go with Suter. You know, obviously given the fact that Manny Fernandez is seen, I think, has been a little inexperienced still to kind of, you know, take that role on. So I do think that is the situation there. Now, the midfield is very interesting. I think it was probably a 4-3-3 looking at this shape. Now, I'm just going off what was being reported by 4 lads. You know, Rothwell, Raskan and Diamonde were in the midfield area. Raskan, obviously, lots of comments made by Russell Martin in the interviews that he gave to Rangers TV as regards Nicholas Raskan. You know, he talked very in very warm terms about Nicholas Raskan, and it's interesting, isn't it, that things seem to have really settled down. As regards Raskan and the rumours of him exiting the club. You know, all the talk of the move to Villa, the move to Wolves, the move to Porto, they all seem to have gone very quiet. Now, this could be a good thing, this could be a bad thing, I don't know. You know, this is the situation. Now, Martin, talking about Raskan, said that he's going to be a different player this season. He's an outstanding footballer. He said last season he had a lot to do. He kind of carried the team a bit. This season he will have less to do due to the players around him. So we should see an even better Nicholas Raskan, because obviously I think he did have a lot of responsibility last season. Given the fact that there was a lot of very poor performances by a lot of players last season, a lot fell on Raskin to kind of hold things together at times. And I think, as Russell Martin's talking, the players we've brought in, the Rothwells, the Asgards, for example, rebirth of Dio. You're seeing, I think, a chance for him not to have as much pressure, not everything to have to go through him and depend on him. And I think that will help Nicholas Raskan this coming season. The other things that come up out of this, obviously, was Asgard. Asgard scored, which is good to see him getting on the score sheet, hitting the ground running, getting going as a Rangers player. That's always positive. Really good news. Kieran Dowell started again, and look, I get the fact that a lot of you will be very angry about that. A lot of you will hate the fact that Dowell started and Dowell played. And yeah, I get it, against Club Brugge, he was poor, very, very poor. But the reports coming out of training camp is that he's doing quite well in training, that he's doing well in these bounce games, and Russell Martin likes him. I don't think Dowell's going anywhere, realistically. I think Dowell will stay and see at least this season out. I think he has a future at the club now. Russell Martin quite clearly likes him. He started him in the last 3 games that he's picked a team for. If he didn't like the player, would he have started him 3 times? No, he wouldn't. And also given the fact that he hinted that the team that we see in this would be close to what we see in the Panathinaikos game, does Dowell quite clearly have a future? Now, we can debate that all we want, and we can talk about how bad a player he was last season, but was that because it was under Michael Beale? Was that because it was under Philippe Clement, who, were genuinely dreadful managers? That's something worth thinking about. Dowell is obviously a decent footballer. He did well at Norwich. Norwich fans raved about him. He did well at Everton. So, is it that he's going to have a rebirth? There's always a couple of players, isn't there? When a new manager comes into any club, there's always a couple of players that kind of suddenly kick on and become better players as a result of getting that new manager. They just kind of work better with the new manager. They bounce off the new manager better than they did under the previous managers. So maybe it's Dowell's kind of found his mentor. Maybe he's found his Master Yoda. I don't know, in Russell Martin, and we're going to see the best of Dowell. The other standout, of course, which is kind of illuminating what I talked about, was Danilo. Danilo scored 1 goal and he assisted the other 3. So his statistics from yesterday's from the game against Dunfermline were scored 1, assisted 3. So he contributed to all 4 goals in this game. And I'll be honest with you guys, this is what I've been saying all along from minute 1. This guy is a good footballer. You wouldn't pay £6 million for a duffer. This isn't. You wouldn't get games for Ajax and Feyenoord, especially for Ajax, if you were a crap player. Okay, so let's deal with a little reality here. This is a guy who held down a place in the Ajax team, and as I said, you don't get to play for Ajax, who are a major European name, a Champions League winning team. Yes, I know they didn't win the Champions League when Danilo was there, but this is a major team. This is a guy who came through the Ajax youth system. The Ajax youth system tends to turn out quite good footballers. Seedorf, Davids, Bergkamp, Koeman, players of this aspect. These are quality footballers. This is a good lad. In his time with Ajax, he played 20 times. He scored 9 goals. In his time with the youth team, he played 51 games, scored 31 goals. This is a guy who quite clearly has a positive impact to make. He's quick, he's strong, he's direct. I think he more kind of meets up with the expectations of what Russell Martin wants from a player. Russell Martin wants a striker to be aggressive. He wants him to be able to press and work along the back 4. He wants him to be quick. And Danilo has all those things. And Danilo is not just a goal scorer. He's a link-up player. He's a player who will link play together. And again, that's something else I think Russell Martin's looking for. I think his all-round game, he is a better striker than Cyril Dessers, because his all-round game is better than Dessers. And I honestly believe, if you go back and you look at the two of them and you look at their careers to this point, and you look at Danilo in Holland with Feyenoord, with Ajax, and you look at Dessers in his past career, this guy is a better striker. He's a better player. And I think if he can stay fit, and I think he gets a lot of unfair criticism because of his injury record. And if you look at his injuries, a lot of his injuries are not his fault. You know, the cheekbone one, where he got his face smashed in, that wasn't his fault. He was going in to score a goal for Rangers, putting his head on the line, and a guy smashes into his face. The ACL injury that he suffered was a horror tackle by a Hearts player. Again, not his fault. These are not muscle injuries that he's getting by not warming up properly or not conditioning his body properly. These are impact injuries from getting the shit kicked out of him by opposition players. So quite clearly not his fault. And, you know, Barry Ferguson said that his attitude stank. Well, it quite clearly doesn't, because at the end of the day, under Russell Martin, we've seen a player who's trained every single day, who's run every single day, who's worked hard every single day. This is what Russell Martin is telling us. In pre-season games, has put in effort, has scored goals, has created chances for others. You know, I think a lot of it with Danilo was frustration that he wasn't getting a chance, that he was actually fit. Now, if you go back to the end of last season, he was fit for the majority of those games, yet never got a look in, never got a chance. Why? Barry Bassett's mismanagement. You know, Barry Ferguson is a Rangers legend, and as a player and as a captain, I will always love him as a captain. But as a manager, he was a fucking disaster. And he was a disaster for this club as a manager as well. You know, he didn't blood the youngsters enough. He didn't give Danilo a fair crack. He didn't give Cortez a fair crack because he was too self-absorbed and too much about looking after himself and trying to get the job rather than actually thinking about developing Rangers for this season. You know, he as a manager, he is quite... I mean, I think if his name hadn't been Barry Ferguson, if his name had been Barry Le Ferguson or Barry Le Fergie, and he'd been from France or from Belgium and he hadn't played for Rangers, I think the majority of fans would have been on his back straight after the first couple of games. But because he was a Rangers legend, because he was a Rangers man, he got a pass. And I know some people will criticise me for that, will slaughter me for that. But it's the truth. It's the absolute truth. Barry Ferguson was I think, was worse than Philippe Clement last season. Genuinely was worse than Philippe Clement as a manager. And people can say, oh, well, he beat Celtic. So did Philippe Clement. Barry Ferguson beat Celtic once. Philippe Clement beat Celtic once. Okay, I'm not rewriting history here. I'm stating a fact. You know, so let's deal with facts here. But Danilo overall, I think, you know, we're seeing a better Danilo now. We're seeing a fitter Danilo, a faster Danilo, a stronger Danilo. And I honestly believe he will start against Panathinaikos. And I welcome that. The guy's a better footballer. The guy is a better footballer than Cyril Dessers. And I'm sorry, if you sit there and you look at Dessers all-round play as a striker, which these days strikers are not just there to score goals, which they are fundamentally there for. 60-70% of their play is about scoring goals. But it's the other 30 to 40% of their game, their link-up play, that ability to link the game, to link the midfield and the attack, to hold the ball up, to enable your team to get out. You know, if you look at the top English clubs, Erling Haaland, amazing striker, but his link-up play is very good indeed. You know, he holds the ball, he brings others into play. You look at Gyökeres, who Arsenal have signed. Again, top player, brings others into play, links the game exceptionally well. You know, you look at, for example, you know, Chelsea have gone and got Liam Delap this summer. Again, another player who links the game very, very well. You look at Newcastle, I've got Alexander Isak. Again, links the game. You know, not just about scoring goals, which he does do. You know, Isak works the back four, presses high, aggressive. Liverpool currently in the market for striker, looking at the likes of Benjamin Sesko, looking at the likes of Alexander Isak, looking at the likes of Hugo Ekitike. All players who are quick, aggressive, work the back four, but not just about scoring goals. They link play, they hold the ball up, they're aggressive. They do far more than just put the ball in the back of the net. And that is what big clubs around Europe do. And that is what Dessers doesn't do for Rangers. And that's what Danilo does do and will do for Rangers, I honestly believe. And look, guys, I'm sorry, but Danilo, for me, if you actually see a fully fit Danilo, you go back and look at what he's done in the past with Ajax and Feyenoord. You look at when he's been fit for Rangers, he's a better player. And I think we're seeing a better Danilo now. And we have to give him that opportunity, I think, to really go on and show this season that he is a top striker. And I think he will. I think if he stays fit this season, and that's the big if, I get that, I understand that. If he stays fit this season, he will score you 20 plus goals, easy, in the league, not a pathetic 18. You know, that's just pathetic in the SPL. He'll score 20 to 25 goals in the SPL, and he'll score another 10 to 15 in other competitions. You'll be looking at a guy who gets 30 to 35 goals this season. Honestly believe that in Danilo this season. Right, let's move it along a little bit. Let's talk a bit of Clinton Nsiala. Now, Clinton Nsiala, obviously has been told that he can depart the club this summer, that he is not part of the plan for Rangers going forward. So where's he going to go? That's the big question, isn't it? Who wants him? Well, it's emerged in the media today, and it's been reported not only in England and in Scotland, but also on the continent in Europe as well. Yes, I know we're part of Europe, but, it kind of is a bit separate. That he's been targeted by 2 Belgian clubs to take on loan initially, possibly with options to buy on those deals. Now, according to reports, one of those clubs is Westerlo, where the manager is Issam Charai, the former Rangers assistant manager. Now, Nsiala made 13 appearances last season. I mean, I still think Nsiala's got something to offer. I think he's a good ball-playing centre-half, and I think with the right coaching and the right manager, he will do well. I genuinely believe that. I think, again, he suffered under Ferguson. I think under Ferguson, his confidence was smashed to smithereens by Barry Ferguson. I think it really was. So look, he has fallen down the pecking order. He is obviously not an option. And the fact that Rangers, of course, have brought in Nasser Giga, we've still got John Souttar, we've got Manny Fernandez, I think does kind of show that we are looking at those guys as being the starting centre-backs, and he doesn't have a part to play. So yeah, heading out on loan, I think is the right thing. So he's going to leave on loan for more game time. Like I said, Westerlo are one of those teams. Issam Charai, obviously, who has worked with Nsiala, who will have seen Nsiala up close at Ockenhowie when he was there last season, likes what he sees and wants to offer him a chance to come and play for Westerlo, which I think is a great option. The Belgian Jupiler League, it's not. It's not a strong league. It's a decent league. You've got Club Brugge, you've got Union Saint-Gilloise, you've got Anderlecht, you've got Genk, you've got teams like that in there. So there are some strong teams. I think it's kind of similar to Scotland in a way. Perhaps a very sort of similar level to Scotland, but you are going to play games. You are going to play against some good teams, some good European teams as well. Club Brugge, Anderlecht, Genk, Union Saint-Gilloise are all regular Champions League teams or Europa League teams, and again that will give him some good opposition to play against. Now, the other team that are interested in taking him on loan are Zulte Waregem, who are again a Belgian team who have just been promoted back to the Jupiler League, to the top flight, after winning the Challenger League last term. The Challenger League is their version of the Scottish Championship. Westerlo finished 10th last season and missed out on a Conference League spot for the upcoming season. So he wouldn't be playing European football. He would just be playing domestic football in Belgium. But it's still an opportunity, I think, and something that I think would be very, very good for the lad. And I think look, as much as I personally would like him to stay, and I think personally he's got a part to play. Heading him out on loan, giving him game time. Hopefully, if he goes to Waregem or to Westerlo, I think personally Westerlo is probably a better option because Charai knows him, knows how he plays, can probably start hit the ground running with him straight away. If he gets 30, 40 games out there, regular first team football, it's going to stand him in good stead. It's going to mean that we get a more experienced player back, and instead of us doing what we always do, which is loan a player, develop him, make him look good, send him back to his own team, and they get the benefits. Hopefully this time we lend one of our players out, he comes back and we get the benefits of that loan, and playing on the continent, playing for a Belgian team like Westerlo or even Zulte Waregem. Nothing new on the old John Souttar thing. I think that possibly is still at very much the early phases. The 1.3 million I think is an insult. I think 2.5, 3 is a much fairer price for John Souttar. However, Ben Davies, it is said and been reported this morning that he is expected to depart, with Birmingham being the likely destination for him before the Scottish season gets underway, for definite. Right, let's move along a little bit. So a former Rangers coach has been appointed to a top European job, a top Premier League job to be precise. Now, many of you will remember Colin Stewart. No, not Colin Stewart, who came on this programme, came on this channel. No, we're talking about Colin Stewart, who is the guy who is the former goalkeeper coach of Rangers. He is now been appointed to Liverpool's staff, which is pretty decent. to get. I mean, he's obviously been very very highly thought of. That if he's been given an opportunity to obviously work for Arne Slot at Liverpool, obviously the English champions, and Colin Stewart has joined up with them as a goalkeeper coach and as an academy coach there. So this is what the Liverpool local Liverpool media sources are reporting. Colin Stewart has joined Liverpool's coaching staff as the new goalkeeper development and pathway lead. The Scot links up with Arne Slot's backroom team after 9 years with Rangers. His first 2 years with Rangers were spent at the helm of the club's academy goalkeeping programme before being promoted to the role of first-team goalkeeper coach, in which he served for 7 years. Stewart, a former professional goalkeeper himself, who also worked with the Scottish FA for more than a decade as a goalkeeping coach educator, delivering relevant courses right across the country. He will now support Javi Valera, who is the Liverpool goalkeeping coach, back at Liverpool as the head of first-team goalkeeping on a daily basis, working with the Reds' senior stoppers on and off the pitch. Additionally, Stewart will oversee loan strategies of goalkeepers who are in the process of making the step up from youth level to senior experience, serving as a link between the men's squad, loan management and the under-21s group. So he will work not only with Alisson Becker, Georgi Mamalashvili, Arman Pesci, Freddie Woodman, I think it is. He will also work with a number of Liverpool's young goalkeepers coming through, find them loan possibilities, manage those. I mean, congratulations to Colin. I mean, look, he's been a great servant for Rangers. He's obviously worked for us for 9 years, done a sterling job. He's often stepped up into the management staff when coaches have departed. I know he was part of Stephen Davis's coaching staff. He was part of Barry Ferguson's coaching. He was not. He actually left, didn't he, before Ferguson? But he was part of Philippe Clement's coaching staff. So he's served the first team really, really well. And I wish Colin all the best. And to get a top job like that, fair play to the lad. I mean, fair play to the lad. Is it one we've missed out on? Could that be the situation? We've actually genuinely missed out on a top coach here. If he's been added to Arne Slot's staff, of course, that now doubles the number of former Rangers coaches employed by Liverpool. Giovanni Van Bronckhorst is the new assistant manager there. Obviously, Gio, the former Rangers manager, wish Gio all the very best there. Personally, love Gio, didn't want to see him sacked. Never was ever will you find me anywhere calling for Gio to be sacked. I think he was very badly treated by Douglas Park and the Rangers board. What a surprise. Douglas Park and Graham Jabber Park. And Colin Stewart, like I said, good luck to both of them. Good luck to both of them. Look, guys, it is now what? We are now coming up for 6 days away from the Panathinaikos game. Some interesting points, some interesting talking points. Who starts, who doesn't start. Dessers and Igman weren't part of the squad yesterday at all. Again, obviously this is because their fitness is nowhere near where it needs to be yet. They're still weeks behind the rest of the party, so I think it's highly doubtful that either of them will start. Well, at least start against Panathinaikos. That they may be on the bench. They may be able to give 15, 20 minutes, but I think that is the tops of what you can expect from the pair going forward until they catch up with the rest of the first team. I think people underestimate how much effect missing pre-season can have on players. If you miss a pre-season or miss any weeks of pre-season, it does put you a long way behind. After coming back off your holidays, coming back from a period of non-activity, working for a new manager, bedding in a new style. These are all things that Hamza and Cyril have missed out on. So, looking at it that way, the situation is very clear. They need more time to get up to speed, and I think that's why we're probably looking at Danilo being the starter against Panathinaikos. But going back to that first topic we talked about today, it's an interesting team selection, and I think we'll see a very interesting team selection once the Panathinaikos team is announced on the night of the game. Now, I think JD Gassama could well feature at some point, given the fact we've signed him and the fact that Russell Martin talked very much about the fact that he is part of the first team plans. But I don't think, that some players that we've expected to depart the club this summer will depart the club. And I think Kieran Dowell is one of them. I think Dowell will still be here throughout the season. So, guys, I'd love to get your thoughts, your comments, your views on all these topics we've talked about this morning. It's a fascinating time, guys. It's a fascinating time. And as I've said all along, I think one of the best things for me over the last few weeks has been that Rangers have finally started to behave like a proper football club, like a real football club that's run by real football people, that's run by people who get the fact that this is a business, that this is a football business now, that is not, some fan's hobby, that is not, been run like a 1970s football club, I think, which was what was being done under the previous board, who were just an embarrassment to this club. I think, this board now under Andrew Kavanagh, Parag Marathe and et al. Are starting to put this club back into the top European echelons, as showing that we are doing business, we are working like a top European club again. And it's something we've been crying out for, which is a modernisation, an evolution of the club and a move forward in the club. And it's great to see that we finally started to do that, isn't it? Guys, I'd love to get your thoughts on all these topics. Obviously, drop me a comment, drop me a view. Guys, if you've enjoyed this content, obviously, please remember, this is all free. We do not charge you. We do not have a Patreon. We don't say you've got to pay us $2.50, $3.50, a $5 a month to access the content. I don't do that. And as you know, in podcasts, I'm different to other content creators because I recognise I'm lucky to be doing what I do, and I wouldn't be doing what I do without you guys. You know, I wouldn't be able to sit here and talk shit for an hour or half an hour or 40 minutes or 10 minutes or 15 minutes without you guys helping, supporting and being part of my family. And I love it. And it's fantastic, guys. And look, it's part of a whole relaunch now. We're relaunching not only the channel, but my life as well. We're moving forward now, obviously, after what's been a horrible start to the year. 2025, the last 6 months have been the worst 6 months of my life. Genuinely have been the worst 6 months of my life. Losing my mum in May was the worst thing that's ever happened to me. Really was. And now we're kind of relaunching, restarting, getting back to being what we need to be and making her proud. Obviously, I've got this fantastic channel. You guys, I've got a job. It's a job. It's not a great job. Not really like it, but it pays the bills until I can sort of do this full time. And I've got a partner as well who's amazing. So look, guys, thank you for watching. Please obviously like, comment, share and subscribe, and I'll catch you very, very soon back here on Glasgow Rangers Nation. Thanks for watching. See you later.